Welcome to Raising the Frequency with Tim and Shannon.
God, hold on. I love this show already.
Yeah, he's like, Tim was like this.
Wow. You know,
Dave said boobies are magic.
They are. Yes.
What a brilliant idea.
Yeah, let's bring in our guest. Meagan Murphy, filmmaker and speaker. Welcome, Meagan. Welcome joining the Raising the Frequency crew here. Tell us, why did you start this focus on women's breasts? Because I think it's the greatest idea in the world, because all men and women love breasts, right? But why the focus?
Babies.
Why the focus on breasts?
Well, breasts seem to only ever be seen through three lenses: sexual, nursing, or cancerous. And there didn't seem to be a broader spectrum with which to understand our own breasts, one another's breasts, talk about our experiences with our breasts, and our experience with breasts in the culture. I mean, we're raised to see breasts as beautiful, but we're kind of taught that they're taboo, they need to be covered. I mean, when do you see a baby girl, a 3 or 4-year-old on a beach with her breasts exposed? I mean, they start covering the mammary glands very early in this culture, and no one really notices that. But it's just interesting, once you start to look in that direction, all these ahas start to come out. So it's a anthropologist sort of dream topic. But how I got into it was, I had early breasts, 5th grade. They were bigger than my classmates. I was hugely embarrassed. I felt like a spectacle. I felt ashamed that they were so big, because everyone was Googling and oogling at me all the time. And a lot of my friends wanted that kind of attention. They relished that kind of attention. And here I was getting it in droves, and I didn't want it.
Right.
And there's reasons for that. I mean, every woman has her own family sort of system. I mean, I came from a family of tall, thin, athletic women. I was like this, pear-shaped, giant-boobed person, and I just felt different. I felt awkward. And I was very athletic. I was extroverted. I had a lot going for me, but I still harbored this hiding thing. And that influenced me more than I really realized. It sort of followed me.
Like your self-esteem, influenced your self-esteem.
It did. My confidence, particularly when it came to sort of a pride in the body and sort of strutting about with a kind of a self-knowing. I didn't develop that. I mean, there were plenty of examples, but they were sort of extreme. There were the celebrities, the Marilyn Monroe, flaunted, and all my mother, who was sort of had smallish breasts, always only said to me, if you got it, flaunt it. If you got it, flaunt it.
Little did you know you'd be talking to Belle later on when you got older with the boys, right?
Yeah, the guys are really interesting because they're just amazed by the breasts. And the breasts are really important bridges for first intimacy. You show your breasts to a boyfriend or to a companion, and that's a decision a girl makes. That's a tender sort of portal that opens, and the boys and the men remember that moment, and they love the breast because it's sort of a gateway to intimacy. And so breasts are very, very powerful, but I don't think women necessarily understand that. They're there as milestones through our early adolescence into our adulthood, and are a big part of our ability to say, I am woman, I am desirable, I am sexual, or I am not. The breasts are really influential, but you're kind of on your own. When I did the interviews, I was struck by how isolated women had been. And I also came to this realization that a girl's relationship with her breasts early on does influence the development of her psyche. I mean, I think her sense of, I am woman, I am proud, I am seen. A lot of women struggle with that because they think their breasts aren't perfect. And of course, we get brought up, B-R-A, apostrophe D, early. And so we get this homogenization that happens. And the truth is, a lot of guys don't know this, but girls don't show each other their breasts. I mean, I don't know if Shannon had this experience, but when I was in the locker rooms as a girl, no one was, showing their breasts. Everyone sort of turned away.
I mean, to an extent, but all of us, it's so interesting what you're saying, because I remember wearing water bras. or doing anything to make my breasts look bigger so I would get that attention, because I didn't get breasts until I was 35. It was the weirdest thing. But so I do understand that, and I also understand the locker room thing. Do men walk around naked in the locker room? Women were more, we cover. We are always in towels. We don't just let it.
And it's under this guise of like privacy and preciousness.
Because we're
and
taught
it's
to be humble and to be private, because your body's your temple and you shouldn't just show it off. But it does make sense because it's not always sexual. Like your breasts, I love what you said, and I really want to talk about that more. It's not just about sex or nursing or cancer. What else does your breast go through? You said it goes through everything with you. So can we talk about that a little bit?
The wisdom of the breast.
The wisdom or the trauma.
Well, yeah, so it's a lot of both and a lot of things at the same time. So it's complicated. And I love complicated topics. I just love to sort of poke around in sort of taboo, undiscussed realms. And I was in a women's mystery school, and I was seeing how enraged women were, but they were sort of suppressing that anger for a lot of reasons. But I was like, gosh, you know, women's stories are kind of untold in this culture. And then I happened to hook up with this. I mean, I went and saw a doctor with an international clientele, an Indian man, and I was talking to him about breasts and chakras. And somehow it came up, and he said 90% of women are unhappy with their breasts.
Wow.
And then he paused.
90%.
And I was like, oh, there's a story here. Because meanwhile, all this breast cancer is rising and rising and going. And I had my own little breast cancer scare. I mean, I think we all did. You know, you go in for the second mammogram, they're concerned about something. And it's so close to the heart that women sort of freak out. I think, just as an aside, why women get double mastectomies, because they're like, just take them off. If I've got an infection on one, it might be in another, and just
I think that's insane. I know women who've done that. I'm like, this is insane.
And it's, you know, it's part of this discussion, this kind of, you know, a kind of an unfamiliarity with this zone and taking pride in it and understanding it and knowing it as a really important portal. So the biggest thing that happened to me after learning that all these women were unhappy with their breasts, and here I am like thinking I'm the only one in the world, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a sort of a widespread thing.
Epidemic.
So, and yeah, it is. You're right. That's not a bad word. So then I happened to go to Egypt. Went on a tour of Egypt. And in the last night, we were in the King's Chamber. And while I was in there, I got this download. I didn't expect it. I mean, it's totally changed my life. But I got this message that breasts contain ancient wisdom.
Amen.
And I'm like,
I concur with that. Like, but what do you mean, though?
What is the wisdom?
Yeah, like,
well, that's what I then tried to go find out. I'm like, let me interview women and see what they would say. If I asked them in a formal interview setting, what is this wisdom that you might or might not sort of possess here? So I ended up getting remarkable content. I just felt like I had the dragon by its tail. It was like a treasure trove of suppressed story, insights, remembrances that had never had an outlet in our culture. Never. Like I said, you're either cancerous, you're sexy, or you're nursing kids, and that's where the conversation ends. And suddenly these women were like, well, you know, they were sharing things they had never shared before. And the interesting thing was when they took off their blouses or tops towards the end of the interview, all of a sudden there was this beauty. There was this.
He's like an empowerment.
There was a feeling of like this decompartmentalization. Like they just were like, this is me. And this is my truth. And I was asking them questions, and they were answering in a way that was so genuine and authentic. And like, I think even if you put a little, about like a tissue or a tiny little scarf over the breast and the breasts were still exposed, it would change it. Once you take away that protective thing that we inherit, you just get this opening that's so profound. And then the women are like gesturing, they're angry, they're telling these stories, they're crying, they're laughing, and you see a woman sort of in a normalized way with her breasts. And I think that's the magic of the project, that's the magic of the product, is that you get to see
So that's incredible download, incredible project you're doing, and I know people could watch this film that you have. It's released now, right? Or it's coming out.
Well, I got picked up by a distributor 5 years ago. It went out to all the public libraries in the United States and Canada, so it's out there. Yeah.
Well,
I decided to do a director's cut, and I just finished that.
Excellent. We'll talk about that after the show. What we can do to help get that exposed. No pun intended. However, I want to say this. I want to say this about breasts and the wisdom of breasts, because I believe you're on something huge. Another pun intended. Is that here it is. You have the you have this wisdom aspect of it, and what we only hear about, like you said, often is the negative wisdom or the negative effects. Like, for example, and there is a direct tie to this. I'm sure you could speak to this as well. Is that women who develop breast cancer, right? Often you'll find the emotional aspect, what you're going to school for, the emotional aspect is you'll find a common denominator that they play the martyr role. They're always giving and sacrificing themselves, and it often manifests itself in the breast from that, the nurturing aspect of the breast. The breasts are an example of nurturing care. That's like the nurturing aspect. That's what we give life. We give life with the breast, right? At least females do. So that's a kind of aspect of how it's being maybe used for wrong, or it's used for to harm. Would you concur to that?
I think it's true a lot of the times, and our friend Christiane Northrup has talked about sort of what the heart chakra will call to itself in terms of martyrdom. And I've seen a lot of breast cancer survivors admit that they maybe contributed to it. But on the other hand, you get a lot of aluminum and deodorants that are coming into this lymph node system here. And this is like a flotsam of, debris that we, sort of absorb from the environment. So we are very susceptible and very vulnerable in this space. But then you have all the mammograms, and mammograms are carcinogenic. It's radiation. And now the New England Journal of Medicine has had to admit that I'm not quoting them, but I've seen this quote and I've heard it from many respected physicians, that the mammogram is one of the leading causes of cancer because it activates cells that would have ordinarily remained dormant. And biopsies do that too. Biopsies
it releases a horrific.
Yes, they release.
Now what?
But it's a necessary tool. Obviously, women want to know. I'm a big fan of thermograms. Yeah. And if you can't get a thermogram or don't feel like you know where to turn and you're in your doctor's office, you can insist on an ultrasound, and that will show any kind of growth. But the mammogram has I think, been oversold, and it ties this pink ribbon around a kind of a self-care practice that women really need to take more responsibility for, rather than sort of putting it off to the annual mammogram. I think that's a mistake. You want to have a regular breast massage practice. Check out this landscape. Keep it activated. Love it. Honor it.
Yes.
Or a good attentive boyfriend or husband. Or girlfriend, whatever floats your boat these days. But also, Meagan, another thing is that we see this almost epidemic of women looking at their breasts and they don't like it. One may be larger than the other, it may be drooping too much, or maybe sticking up too high, or the nipples they don't like. There's so many specifics of the breast that they will create a self-esteem and image to it where it goes down the road of the body dysmorphia, right? It goes down the road like there's something wrong with me. How do women accept that aspect of it? And perhaps and we'll talk about how they accept it, and then we'll talk later about the breast surgeries and how women are just just changing their breasts because they're unhappy about it. And is it really destroying the wisdom, or is it doing something that's helpful?
Well, because breasts are so contradictory, they're beautiful, but they're dangerous, and like I said, the baby girls on the beach, people have a fear of the mammary gland that's inexplicable. And I think that because young girls are taught to wear bras before they have breasts and not told why, that you're just told, now it's time to wear a bra, dear. And it's like, and girls sort of go merrily off to the department store. Oh, this is my first adult experience and outing, and I'm with my mom, and I have a bra, and it has lace, or it has tiger print. It's like girls kind of absorb it from that materialistic point of view. But when it really is just tragically a kind of a cloak that comes down,
a shaming of it,
separating yourself not only from other women but from, in a way, yourself. So there's this existential shame that gets rooted, because when I asked women about their memories, about the link between their first memories of themselves and their bodies and that selfhood that sort of bubbles up from there, they couldn't really quite pinpoint sort of the origins of the shame, but it was something existential in nature. And this is why they invited me to the sociology conferences to talk about the breast archives, because I'm like, if you want to get at a wound that a woman is sort of harboring kind of slightly unconsciously, the portal of the breast is one way of going in and sort of fleshing it out and bringing it forward. And even if you felt like, I always liked my breasts and I feel great about my breasts, there's something there that you kind of repressed. But for a lot of women, like 85 or 90%, there's some story, oh, my breasts were uneven. A lot of women don't like their pendulous breasts. You know, the uneven thing is huge. Inverted nipples, you know, that's a big deal. Hairy nipples, whatever. There's all kinds of irregularities that women are like, oh my, it's like, oh my God, I'm not perfect. And the standard of perfection is established very early. So it's a trap.
I feel like if we can, though, encourage younger, I love what you said about I love that you're calling mammary glands, because why can't we just sun gaze with our mammary glands or look at ourselves in the mirror and do affirmations every single day, thanking our body, thanking our breasts for what they do and how they're adding. Like, mine are sexual, but they also feed my baby.
I don't think you're
I love what you said. They've been with me through everything. So that's such an appreciation. It's a different outlook. So I think that what you're doing is such a beautiful thing. And that's what we need to be doing, is encouraging young people to accept themselves for how they are made.
I agree, but I don't think you're going to have a lot of pushback from men saying women should be able to walk around with showing their breasts. I think the pushback's going to come from women, not men. Men are like, yeah,
I agree. Women, we kind of are our own worst enemies.
Well, it's what were you going to say?
Well, you know, women are the culprits around shaming other women around their bodies, because it is a place of true power that women don't really understand. And I think women sort of are already at a disadvantage in the culture. I mean, in a lot of ways it's subtle, but in a lot of ways it's overt. But women will kind of jockey around a perceived abnormality, and they'll sort of call it out in another woman. And that happens early, before a woman has a wisdom to have the compassion. And I think mothers and daughters should see the film together. There's a lot of opening conversations that start as a result of seeing it. And then I think the young boys and girls in sort of high school and even middle school should see the film.
We got to get going here, but I just wanted to say, you know, it's what's symptomatic of this 90% of what you talk about, how women have a poor self-image of their breast. What's symptomatic is the level of plastic surgery of the breast that is occurring, I believe. And I think that's a sad part. Because
more and more people, by the way, are reversing breast implants.
Good. And I'm hoping that trend continues, because I think we are losing that sacred aspect to the female, losing that to the breast, and how it should be exposed to light and to the sun, as just as much as men chests are. So with that saying, listen, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom on breasts. And we'll definitely have you back, Meagan, as well. And if you're around the neighborhood, come join us for breakfast later. So outside of that, I want to thank you for coming on. People can see your film where right now?
TheBreastArchives.com is my website. The Breast Archives is available in public libraries. It's available on iTunes. It's available on Amazon. It is around. My director's cut has not yet been released, but I am offering screenings. I'm a keynote speaker. I'm a panelist, moderator. So yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Awesome.
Meagan, thank you so much, guys. When we get back, we have some